welcome back to another episode of Navigating Wellness. Now this is a very unconventional episode. It's one that it's not scripted, it's me going off the cuff, so apologize in advance if my language is not really that great, because I usually have to script things to try and keep things in order, else my mind goes off on tangents. However, this is one of those videos that I believe lays down the foundation of understanding what is really going on with our system. And if people don't really understand this, it's very hard to connect the dots. It's one where many dismiss this because it's being labeled as conspiracy or because they have a partial understanding of it. But the problem with a partial understanding is it doesn't really give you the full perspective and the picture of what's really going on in this reality that we are living within. And I'm not going to take you down the rabbit hole, else I'll spend years discussing on this video all the nuanced things that are going on. However, I can perhaps show you the doorway to this rabbit hole. And it's only when you do the work for yourself and research and start to connect the dots that the system starts to make more sense in your mind, and you start to understand why we have this excessive rise in chronic health illnesses today. And it's by design, and that is the unfortunate part. And many people label this as conspiracy. And even for a time when I first set out on this path and I was trying to find answers for my own health conditions, I dismissed this, thinking it can't be so. However, as I went deeper down this rabbit hole, a lot of dots started to connect, and I could no longer just dismiss it. Now, this isn't me saying, oh, I have all the answers, probably far from that. However, there are few things that I think are very helpful to understand, especially if you're going on this healing journey to try and make better health decisions, and probably why you notice a lot of my content tries to steer you away from using conventional products. And even though I try my best to avoid it, I know sometimes I too fall victim to using these conventional products. And the problem with a lot of the conventional products, especially what I want to touch on in this video is pharmaceutical drugs, is that they operate by design to give you an immediate quick fix solution to your problem, but later it ends up taking much more out of you. And I almost want to draw this analogy to, and some of you may be familiar with this, but this is a very spiritual rabbit hole that I'm going to go down now. Now, people who are familiar with reality transurfing, the book by Vadim Zeland, he references this concept of having these spiritual egregores, almost like energy vampires. And I think it really helps to contextualize a lot of what I'm going to say, but many people may see this as far-fetched. However, a lot of drugs that are designed by pharmaceutical companies are designed with this approach, where he describes the use of alcohol, where it gives you this immediate sense of pleasure and maybe a numbing of your situation that you're dealing with, but later you get this hangover and this really bad outcome following excessive alcohol consumption. And essentially, it's energy vampires that are feeding you or pushing you towards the consumption of alcohol and then sucking the energy out of you when you have the hangover. Now, the same principle applies when it comes to a number of these pharmaceutical drugs. They are designed inherently with that very same energetic type of footprints, where they'll give you that quick, immediate relief, but then take a lot out of you energetically and really send you down this path headed towards a chronic illness or making your condition worse, because these are not drugs that are designed to help people. They are designed to pull you further down into illness, into poor health. Now, unfortunately, many of us will dismiss this when you hear it. But if we don't understand how these pharmaceutical companies operate, and it's not just from a profit motive, there's actually a much bigger scheme at play in the background. And it's only by coming to this understanding that we can steer ourselves away from it. Because unless we appreciate how these drugs are being designed and with what type of energetic footprints they're having, we don't really appreciate the negative effects that they have on us. We don't fully appreciate it. We see them as just coincidental side effects, like almost like they are a necessary part of the drug. It's probably very possible for a lot of these companies to actually design drugs that don't have side effects. The side effects are there intentionally to push people into poorer and poorer states of health. From an energetic perspective, because it sucks a lot of energy out, it dumbs down the vibration of people and puts them in that fear and anxiety state, so that these energy vampires, or egregores as Vadim Zelen refers to them as, can suck more and more energy out of humans, and basically that's how they sustain themselves, on people's fear and anxiety. From a profit perspective, obviously it's easy to comprehend. The more sick people you have, the more money you are able to, or profits you are able to generate from these people who develop more and more chronic illnesses. And now I know many will say, well, I don't really have alternatives, and this is really the part that makes me feel very sad, because they've done a lot to stifle alternative health treatments and a lot to stifle drugs that actually do work without side effects. We probably never see the light of day. And if you are in that type of situation, and I know sometimes I find myself in a situation where you can't avoid and you have to use a certain drug, or you have to use certain antibiotics because you have no access to something alternative, or maybe we just don't have the awareness. I'm not perfect either, and I also still make a lot of mistakes down this path. But when we're in those types of situations, what can we do? And this also may seem very out there, and it's not something I'm even remotely close to mastering, but I think some approach that we perhaps should give a little bit of attention to is starting to consciously connect with things around us and trying to consciously shift the energy of the drug that we are taking. So what am I talking about? Essentially, we're trying just a similar approach to how people bless the food that they eat. It's almost like we're trying to increase the vibration of the food that we eat, so that it doesn't have all these negative adverse outcomes. So similarly, if you're in a position where you're forced to take a drug, try and consciously connect to it, consciously try and bring in the presence of God to bless the drug so that it doesn't have these harmful effects on us. And now I'm not saying this is easy, but perhaps it's something we can try to do. If you ever notice people who eat a lot of junk food, but they have that very strong divine connection to God's source energy, they're able to alchemize the food to not have that much of a negative effect on it. Now, I'm not saying this is what we should all be doing in consuming more and more junk food. However, if you are in a predicament where you have no other alternative but to take certain drugs to be able to manage your condition, this might be something to look into, because for a long time, spirituality has been ignored. For a long time, consciousness has been dumbed down, and this world of science has taken over and essentially killed true spirituality. And I think now is the time to really shift into the spiritual connection and to recognize that there are ways beyond what we consider conventional to try and shift things for ourselves, so that we can evolve ourselves and also find a way out of this matrix. So I hope this was not a heavy loaded video, but it's something we need to understand, because this entire system that we are living within has been infiltrated in so many different ways. Because yes, we do have these things called shadow governments and shadow cooperatives that operate behind a number of these big corporations that are essentially like pulling the strings, and they have a very malevolent purpose. And unfortunately, many of us fall victim to it, and we dismiss this because it's not something that resonates with a lot of people. They'll just not want to go down the rabbit hole, not want to spend a lot of time. It is a very dark rabbit hole, it's a very deep rabbit hole, and people will say, well, I just don't have time. But unfortunately, it's affecting a lot of us. And if you're someone who is suffering with a chronic health condition, this is something that I almost want to say you need to convince yourself to go down this path, so at least it can give you a better perspective. But I'm in no way trying to coerce anyone to taking on a particular perspective, because that's the worst thing you can do, is for me to tell you everything according to my view. I can tell you this might be something where you would find a lot of the answers to the questions that you have in terms of why are certain drugs giving you such bad side effects, why are the foods that you're eating not resulting in your healing of your condition, and why, just questioning this very reality, and why are so many things from the environments we live in, the way in which our lives are structured, why is it all just sapping our energy from a holistic living perspective? Why is it that we are not able to thrive in this environment? Why are all these negative forces having so much of dominance? And it's only once we start to collectively realize this that change starts to come through. And it's only when this change starts to come through that we can truly shift this reality to living much more connected to nature, much more healthier lifestyles where we can thrive and be healthy and get rid of a lot of these chronic health conditions that are really impeding the quality of so many people's lives today. I know my channel is shadow banned, so if this video doesn't reach you, or if I'm the only viewer of my own video, I'm hoping somebody can take benefit from it and it reaches the people who it needs to reach out to, because it is a really important message that I hope many can start going down this path. Yes, there are many people who are awake, but there are also that many or many more that are still unaware of a lot of things that are going on, that are still watching all the mainstream stuff and not finding the answers to their question. But as always, I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.